Oh, I'm sorry, guys. How are you? I was just listening to a little music there and getting ready for our video. This is, I believe, video number 4. All right, and what we want to look at is the Renaissance. Begins 1455. Gutenberg invents the Bible. You get Machiavelli. You get Henry VIII, and you get the Peace of Augsburg that ends the religious wars in Germany. And you also get Elizabeth I becoming the Queen of England. Come on, I want a different color, pen color. Today we are going to go magenta. So again, what I want you to see here is the Renaissance isn't a moment. Look, we're looking at 300 years here. So really what you're looking at is a ton of little Renaissances that get kicked up and really helped by this event. And then in 1564 you get Shakespeare being born. Remember, printing press had been a Chinese invention. Chinese had been using the movable type. It's Gutenberg who brings it to Germany. He develops, the printing press allows for quick, cheap book production. This is clearly one of the most important inventions in the history of mankind. In fact, Time Life magazine ranked it the #1 invention of all time. And notice the first book, the Bible. So that gives you a sense of the Dark Ages, the time before the Renaissance, because he's still emphasizing the importance of the Bible. Alright? So we get the printing revolution. All that stuff we just said. Alright? Alright, good. We did all that. Humanism is in the belief of people, the power of people. Alright? Somebody asked about that the other day. I say alright a lot. Vernacular is the language of the day, yo. So if you try to talk like people be talking today, you use the vernacular, son. Word up. I don't know. I'm sorry. Alright, that was #pathetic. So section 2. Take a second and look at these. Please enter a guess. Let's check how you did. The correct answers. Watch, that's fancy, isn't it? Oh. John von Eyck! And the Renaissance began in Italy. Alright, so this is what you want to be able to do at the end of this video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, just 4. Cause of the Reformation. So we're now done with the Renaissance. The Renaissance is all about art, culture. Reformation is going to be changes in religion. Alright? The church or authority got challenged. The world is becoming more secular, more worried about things outside of the church. The church's authority is going to get challenged, not only by people inside the church, but outside the church. And the whole Pope-King dynamic is still a problem. And you're also going to see the printing press. Now, if you have an idea that you think the church is doing something wrong, you publish a book, and now hundreds of other people have that idea. Before the printing press, you had a good idea, you couldn't share it to people. And again, dollar bill, y'all, it all comes down to money. The merchants in the north resented having to pay the church's taxes. Alright? Let's do that again. Alright? Again, people become critical of the church. Once one person has the idea, now the printing press can send that idea out to a lot of people. Alright, the Renaissance is putting emphasis on secular and the individual, and that runs almost against everything that the church would say. Again, church was too strong, too interested in worldly things. Again, the idea, these are the causes. Almost like the church went outside of its boundaries. The church should have been worried about religion and how to get into heaven and things like that, and the church started getting involved in a lot of things that weren't under its purview. The most famous of the critics is we're going to talk about Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther. There were corrupt leaders, extravagant popes. The popes were living large. They were collecting a lot of money and they were spending it. And what we're seeing are poorly educated priests who couldn't read the Bible or couldn't really understand what the Bible was said. People started seeing them as the representative of their church, and they lost faith in the church. Many of these priests were involved in unpriestly activities. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. John Huss, John Wycliffe were the first call for reformers, and their real criticism was that the Bible should be more important than the Pope, and the Pope should probably pretty much just know your role, as The Rock once said. Again, stress the Bible. Erasmus and Thomas More were also outspoken critics of the way the church was working, and Europeans were able to read their books, think about it, and then over time, a young man named Martin Luther, he gets mad as he can be. And he was really upset at a friar named Johann Tetzel. Tetzel was selling what's called indulgences. Basically what he was selling were get-out-of-hell free cards. If you paid money for your dead relative, alright, that would release them from their sin. So obviously if they're really rich, had committed a lot of sins, they could give money to the church, and everybody believed they could go to heaven. Those are clouds. That's an angel playing a harp, alright? In 1517, Luther literally walks up to the church, takes his 95 complaints, takes it on out, nails it to the wall of the church. Amazingly enough, doesn't hit his thumb. Pretty impressive. And then he goes to the printing press, makes a ton of copies of this, circulates it through Germany. Luther launches the Reformation, a movement for religious reform, and the Reformation rejects the Pope's authority. Again, the problems he attacked, we talked about that. Who was Martin Luther? Where does he get off saying all this stuff? First of all, had a very awesome hat collection, alright? He was very against the sale of indulgences. He wrote this, and he began 95 theses. Is definitely on the test. That's probably the biggest document in this whole test. The biggest invention is going to be Johann Gutenberg and the printing press. What did Luther teach? He said you were justified, you were strong religion if you were justified in your faith, and he believed that all church teaching should be based on the Bible. He said all people were, if with faith, were equal, and he said basically a priest is just a job. It doesn't make you more holy, more special than anybody else. And you win salvation. You can get to heaven by doing good works and having faith, not by having dollar bills, y'all. Alright, listen to the Bible, not the Pope. The Pope gets mad. What? How dare you say this about me? Pope Leo X issues a decree threatening to excommunicate Luther, kick him out of the church. Luther's right to church membership are taken away. Luther refuses to take back his statements and is excommunicated. Basically, the Pope kicks him out of the church. The Emperor gets mad, and he issues an Edict of Worms. Worms is basically a city. Not like crawly worms, but like there's a city in Germany, alright? Declaring Martin Luther a heretic. Luther and his followers began a separate church, religious group called the Lutherans. Again, not so creative with the name, but good. This leads to a peasants' revolt. See how this all kind of connects? Inspired by the Reformation, a massive change, German peasants go and revolt against serfdom. So that's taking us back to the Dark Ages. Martin Luther, inspired by the printing press, inspired by all his things, creates the Reformation, and the Reformation again helps fight against serfdom. The princes crush the revolts. Again, all of the people in charge of the manors, the feudal lords, crush the revolt, and about 100,000 people die. Inspired the Reformation, good. At some point, some of the princes side with Luther, and they become known as Protestants. Charles V fails to return rebellious princes to the Catholic Church, and there's a war in Germany. It's Luther's princes versus Charles' princes. So all of those little manors would pick a side. There's a war going back and forth. And it's not until 1555 that there's the Peace of Augsburg, where basically each prince can decide the religion of his state or his region. Next, we're going somewhere else. Good day, mate. Would you like a spot of tea? Okay, I'm terrible at that. I did watch the London Olympics, though. Henry VIII wants a son. Henry only has a daughter. He needs a male heir to rule England. He's the king of England. He wants a kid. The problem is, his wife and he keep trying to have kids, and no luck. And he only has a daughter. So he wants a divorce. The Pope refuses to annul, set aside his first marriage to Catherine of Aragon. So if you can't get the Pope to do it, Henry VIII says, I'm going to reform basically the church. And he passes a law that says the Pope doesn't have power in England. So basically, to get a divorce, he created a whole new church. Henry VIII remarries, becomes the official head of the church. Thomas More refuses to go to this Catholic church and is beheaded for his refusal. Thomas More spoke out against Henry in 1534, and the Act of Supremacy stated that England citizens must renounce the Pope's authority and accept Henry as the official leader of the Church of England. Henry died in 1547. Just a quick thing. Henry VIII died in 1547. His son, Edward VI, was just 9 years old, ruled for 6 years. Then you get Mary. She brings back Catholicism. You may also know her as Bloody Mary because of the fights. And then you've got Elizabeth. Alright? So Elizabeth comes back, and she comes back, and some Protestant Catholics oppose Elizabeth. Philip II, the Catholic King of Spain, threatens England. Elizabeth's need for money brought her into conflict with Parliament. So she has to decide what she wants to do. And, excuse me, Elizabeth restores Protestantism. Alright? So for a minute there, we get a separate church, or we get a church called the Anglican Church, and she becomes the head of the church. Elizabeth created reforms that appealed to both Catholics and Protestants, many Catholic traditions, but priests could marry. So if your priest is married, you may be an Anglican. Alright? If your priest isn't married, you may not be an Anglican. Just to give you a little idea, Henry VIII's first kid. Notice the problem. Mary is a girl. Mary, Mary, why you bugging? Then he marries Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn, girl. So then he marries Jane Seymour. She gives him Edward. Then he marries 1, 2, 3 more times. Alright? So Tetzel's selling indulgences because that upsets it. Martin Luther posts his 95 Theses. What are some of the things that happen? Luther protests. The Pope excommunicates Luther. So this is the Pope. That's the king of the Holy Roman Empire, who declares him a heretic. Luther churches begins. Germans peasant result. Charles V goes to war. All right. Can you do it? We'll talk a little bit more about Calvin in video 5. Alright? Oh, what was I watching at the beginning of the video? I'm glad you asked. Okay, let's do this. This part of the video is no longer required, but it's awesome. Martin Luther, in addition to being upset about the Catholic Church, was a part-time rapper. I'm lying. And he made this rap video. I'm lying. What you see here are selling of indulgences. So dead family members could theoretically buy their way out of hell or purgatory and buy their way into heaven. There's Martin Luther.
Church problems that don't blame God, son. I got 95 theses, but the Pope ain't one. Listen up, all my people, it's a storm for time. About the sin and injustice and corruption I've been spilling. I met that homie Campbell and I started rebelling. Once I seen the fat indulgences that he been selling. Now the Catholics of the world straight up disgracing me. Just because I wear my finger in the papacy. My people got run over for this Reformation. That's when Leo threatened me with excommunication. I want y'all to rule Mr. Greater the terms. If not, then you can eat my die the worms. Spectacular. I put the whole Bible in the vernacular. Someone told me alone. You forgot salvation comes through faith alone. I'm on a mission of God. You think I do this for fun? I got 95 theses, but the Pope ain't one. Save me. 95 theses, but the Pope ain't one. If you have church problems, then don't blame God, son. I got 95 theses, but the Pope ain't one. 1 5 1 7 when it first went down. Then the real test is when it started spreading around. 60 days to a man. What I said, Father, please, you've had what going on 15 centuries?